The bus stopped with a long, tired sound. The brakes cried like something old and broken. The door opened, and a cold wind rushed in. From the last seat of the bus, she slowly stood up. Her name was Sarah, and this was her first step into the world after 5 long years behind bars. 5 years of silence. 5 years of darkness. 5 years of remembering one night that changed her life forever. Sarah stepped down onto the dusty road of the small mountain town. Everything felt different, yet painfully familiar. The thin trees, the smell of pine, the empty roads, all of it whispered memories she tried to forget. She held no bags, no luggage. Just a small piece of paper in her hand with one thing written on it. Cabin 17. Her eyes stayed on it for a long moment. She swallowed. She had not said that address out loud in years. The bus drove away, leaving a cloud of dust behind her. When the sound faded, she realized how quiet the town truly was. Too quiet. As if the mountains around her were waiting, watching. People in the cafe across the street stared at her. Some whispered. Some pointed. She knew that look, fear mixed with gossip. She felt it so many times before. A woman coming back from prison was a story the town would never forget. But Sarah wasn't here to meet anyone. She wasn't here to explain herself. She wasn't here to ask for forgiveness. She came for one thing. One place. One memory trapped under the wooden floor of a cabin she hoped no longer existed. She started walking through the narrow road that curled deeper into the forest. Leaves crunched under her boots. Birds stopped singing when she passed. Even the wind felt colder. Every step seemed to pull her back in time. In her mind, she could still see flashing red and blue lights. She could still hear the police officer shouting her name. She could still feel handcuffs closing around her wrists. And she could still see the cabin door behind her, closing. The path grew steeper. The trees grew thicker. She remembered this route so well that her feet moved without thinking. Every curve, every broken branch, every old sign, they were the same as 5 years ago. After 20 minutes of walking, she reached the old wooden board that read, Mountain Ridge Trail, Private Area. The sign was crooked now, covered in moss. Sarah stared at it. Her heart beat faster, louder. This was it. The entrance to her past. The place she never thought she'd return to. The place that took everything from her. She stepped through the trail, pushing branches away. The forest opened slowly, revealing a small clearing. And then she froze. The cabin was still there. Her chest tightened. For years, she believed it would have been sold, destroyed, burned down, or simply forgotten. But no. It stood in the same exact spot, looking older but not abandoned. Smoke rose gently from the chimney. A warm orange light glowed from the window. Someone was inside. Sarah's skin crawled. Her breath caught in her throat. She thought the cabin would be empty. She thought she could just sneak in, grab her hidden box, and leave before anyone noticed. But someone lived here. She stepped closer, trying not to make noise. Her mind raced with questions. Who stayed here now? Did they know what happened in this cabin? Did they know about her? Would they call the police if they saw her? She reached a tree and hid behind it. The cabin door was half open, just slightly. Like an invitation. Or a trap. She couldn't tell. Her fingers trembled as she held the tree bark. She remembered the last time she stood at that door. 5 years ago. Running. Crying. Begging someone to believe her. Sarah took a slow breath. She had to be careful. She leaned forward to hear any sound coming from the inside. At first there was nothing. Silence. But then she heard footsteps, steady, slow, and heavy. Someone moving inside the cabin. Someone who wasn't supposed to be there. Her heart hammered. She stepped back. But her foot snapped a dry stick on the ground. Crack! The sound was sharp. Too sharp. The footsteps inside the cabin stopped. Her breath froze. Then she heard the floorboard creak. Another step. Closer to the door. Sarah held her breath and waited. The door moved a little. The light from inside spilled onto the ground. Then a shadow appeared in the doorway. A tall figure stood there. Broad shoulders. Still posture. Silent and unreadable. Sarah's mouth went dry. Her mind screamed to run, but her legs refused to move. The figure spoke, voice deep and familiar. Sarah? Her body locked. A shiver ran down her spine. She had not heard that voice in 5 years. That voice belonged to someone she never expected to see again. Someone she hoped was gone. Someone who knew everything about that night. Someone who should not have been here. She stepped out from behind the tree, slowly, cautiously. The man inside the cabin stepped forward into the light. It was Mark. The last person she saw before the police arrested her. The last person she trusted. The last person she believed would ever look at her again. Mark stared at her with wide eyes, as if he was seeing a ghost. Sarah, you came back. His voice shook. She could barely breathe. She wanted to run. She wanted to scream. She wanted answers. Instead, she whispered only one thing. I thought you sold this place. Mark stepped closer. His eyes cold. His face unreadable. I never sold it, he said quietly. Some things are hard to let go. The wind howled. The cabin lights flickered. Sarah suddenly felt something dangerous in the air, something she couldn't name. Why did he still keep the cabin? What was he hiding? And why did his voice sound like he had been waiting for her? Mark stood in the doorway, the warm cabin light behind him, but nothing about his face looked warm. His sharp eyes stayed fixed on Sarah as if he was trying to decide whether she was real, or just a memory that came to haunt him. The cold evening wind pushed against her back, almost warning her not to take another step. But she stepped forward anyway. After 5 years in prison, fear wasn't new to her. Mark didn't move aside. He stood there like a guard blocking the entrance. The space between them felt heavy, filled with old secrets that refused to die. Sarah swallowed. You're still here? Mark's jaw tightened. And you came back at the exact same time I thought I'd finally forgotten everything. His words sounded calm, but something beneath them trembled, a quiet anger or maybe a quiet fear. She couldn't tell. She didn't answer. Instead, she looked past him into the cabin. Everything inside looked almost identical to how it looked 5 years ago. Same wooden table. Same old fireplace. Same pictures on the wall. Only one thing was different. Mark. He looked older, more tired, like life had been slowly pulling the energy out of him. Mark noticed her looking past him. Why are you here, Sarah? He asked, voice low. No one comes back to this place unless they want something. She stepped back slightly but didn't break eye contact. I left something in the cabin, she said. I came to take it. Mark's eyes narrowed. After 5 years? And the first thing you do is come here? Sarah didn't reply. She didn't need to explain herself to him. But she could feel something strange about him, like he was hiding a truth inside his silence. Mark finally moved aside, slow and unwilling. Come in, he said. But his tone didn't sound like an invitation. It sounded like a warning. Sarah stepped inside. The wooden floor creaked under her shoes, a sound she hadn't heard since that night, the night that ruined everything. Mark closed the door behind them. The click of the lock echoed through the room. Sarah's heartbeat jumped. Why lock it? She asked. Mark shrugged. Old habit. This place feels less safe than before. His answer didn't help. The cabin felt too quiet, too closed in. Sarah moved around the room, pretending to study the space, but she was really checking if her hidden spot under the floorboard was still untouched. Mark leaned against the wall with his arms crossed, watching her carefully. Not like a friend. Not like a stranger. But like someone studying her every move. You know, he said softly, people in town still talk about you. Sarah kept her eyes on the floor. I don't care. They think you'll bring trouble again, he added. I'm not here for trouble, she replied firmly. I'm not here for anyone. I just need what I left. Mark tapped his fingers against his arm. What did you leave, exactly? Sarah didn't answer. Not yet. Not until she saw the box with her own eyes. Instead, she walked to the fireplace. Her hands shook slightly, but she forced them to stay steady. Mark noticed. You're nervous, he said. Why? Are you afraid I'm still angry? Sarah turned toward him. Should I be? Mark didn't smile. He didn't even blink. That depends, he said slowly, on what really happened that night. Her chest tightened. The night he was talking about was the reason she went to prison. The reason she lost everything. The reason she had to hide something important under the floor before she was taken away. And Mark was the last person she saw before the police arrived. Sarah walked toward the old wooden table and touched its edge. Marks and scratches covered it. She remembered making some of them. She turned around. The cabin looks exactly the same. Mark's eyes darkened. Some memories don't leave easily. He stepped closer. His voice dropped lower. You weren't supposed to come back. Sarah froze. Why? Mark stood only a few feet from her now. Close enough to notice the tension in his shoulders. Close enough that she could feel the heat from the fireplace behind her and the cold fear building inside her. He leaned forward slightly. Because someone else came here a few days ago, he said. Someone asking about you. Sarah's stomach dropped. Who? Mark shook his head. I don't know. They didn't tell me their name. They only asked one question, if she ever returns, call me. Sarah's heartbeat quickened. Did you? Mark looked straight into her eyes. No. Why not? He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he walked toward the small window and pushed aside the curtain. The forest outside was darker than before. The trees swayed harshly, as if something was moving between them. Mark kept looking outside. Because I wanted to see why you came back. I wanted to hear the truth, from you. Sarah clenched her fists. I'm not here to talk about the past. I'm here for my box. Mark turned around sharply. So it's true, he said. You did hide something. Sarah stepped back again. It's mine. I just want to take it and leave. Mark took a slow step toward her. His voice was quiet, steady, almost emotionless. And do you think I'll let you walk out, without knowing what's inside that box? Sarah's breath caught in her throat. The room felt colder. The silence felt heavier. And for the first time, Sarah wondered if coming back to the cabin was not just dangerous, but a mistake. The cabin felt smaller now. The air inside was thick, like it carried the weight of 5 years of unspoken words. Sarah stood near the fireplace, but even the warm flames couldn't calm the cold fear growing inside her. Mark stood in front of her with his arms crossed, waiting for an answer she wasn't ready to give. He repeated the question, slowly this time. What's inside the box, Sarah? Sarah looked away. Her voice came out low. It's something from my past. Mark didn't move. His eyes didn't blink. Your past put you in prison. She felt the sting of his words, but she refused to show it. I didn't come to talk about that night, she said. I came to take what's mine and leave. Mark stepped closer, just one small step, but it felt like the whole room shifted. You can take it, he said. But you can't leave, not until you tell me the truth. Sarah's heartbeat thumped in her ears. Why do you care, she asked. You never visited me in prison. You never wrote. You never tried to help. Mark's eyes flickered. You think it was that simple? She waited, but he said nothing else. Silence stretched between them, uncomfortable, sharp, almost dangerous. Sarah turned away again. She had to stay focused. She didn't come here to fight with Mark or solve the mystery of his strange behavior. She came because she had only one chance to get the box before someone else did. Someone who had already visited the cabin asking about her. Sarah didn't know who they were. But she knew one thing. If they found the box before she did, the truth she had protected for years would be destroyed. She walked toward the far corner of the room, pretending to look around casually. Mark watched her closely, following every step with his eyes. You remember this room well, he said softly. Sarah ignored him. But she did remember it. Every crack on the floor. Every creak in the wood. Every shadow in the corners. This room was the last place she felt safe before everything fell apart. Her eyes drifted to the exact spot where the floorboard was loose. She felt a sharp pull in her chest. She was close. Anxiety rushed through her body. Mark was too close. And he wasn't acting like the same man she once trusted. Before she could take another step, Mark spoke again, quiet but firm. You know. I never believed you were guilty. Sarah froze. Her breath caught. Slowly, she turned back toward him. What? Mark's voice was steady, but his eyes were sad. I told the police you didn't do it. They didn't listen. Sarah felt her knees weaken for a moment. She placed a hand on the edge of the table to steady herself. You told them, she whispered. Why didn't you tell me before? Mark let out a breath that sounded tired, almost broken. Because I didn't want to see you in chains. I didn't want you to see me fail. Her chest tightened with emotions she didn't understand. Was he telling the truth? Or was he trying to distract her? She couldn't trust anyone. Not anymore. Sarah walked toward the window and looked outside. The forest was darker now. Silent. Almost too silent. The trees swayed like something was moving behind them, watching the cabin. She turned back to Mark. There were things I couldn't say back then, she said quietly. There are things I still can't say. Mark's face darkened. Is that why you hid the box? Sarah didn't answer. Because the truth was more dangerous than Mark could imagine. 5 years ago, before she was arrested, someone warned her. Someone whispered through the darkness. Hide it. Don't let them find it. Run. Those words had haunted her in prison. And now she was back to protect something that could finally reveal the truth. But Mark wasn't making it easy. He stepped in front of her again, blocking her view of the cabin. His voice dropped lower, almost a whisper. Who are you afraid of, Sarah? She looked directly into his eyes. Everyone. Mark's jaw clenched. You can trust me. Sarah shook her head slowly. I don't know that. Mark opened his mouth to speak, but something outside made them both freeze. A faint crunching sound of footsteps. Slow. Heavy. Close. Sarah's breath hitched. Mark turned his head toward the window. The sound came again. And again. As if someone was circling the cabin. Mark whispered, "Don't move." But Sarah wasn't listening. Her eyes were locked on the door. Her instincts screamed danger. Someone was out there. Mark stepped toward the window, pushed the curtain aside, and his entire body stiffened. Sarah couldn't see what he saw, but his face said everything. Fear. Real fear. He stepped back quickly. We're not alone, he whispered. Sarah's heartbeat quickened. Who is it? Mark shook his head. I don't know, but they're watching the cabin. Sarah looked around the room. She couldn't waste any more time. She needed the box. Now. She lowered herself to the floor, her fingers trembling as they touched the wood. She pressed lightly. The old loose board shifted under her hand. Mark saw her. His eyes widened. "Sarah, what are you doing?" She didn't answer. She slid her fingers under the floorboard and lifted it. A breath escaped her chest. There it was. A small, dust-covered wooden box. Exactly where she left it. The same box that had destroyed her life. She pulled it out and held it against her chest. Mark stared at it like he recognized it. Like he remembered it from somewhere. He took a slow step forward. "That box," he whispered. "You should have left it buried." Sarah looked at him with fear and determination mixed in her eyes. "I couldn't." Because inside that box was the one thing that could finally prove she wasn't guilty. But before she could open it, someone knocked on the cabin door. 3 slow, heavy knocks. Each louder than the one before. Mark and Sarah locked eyes. Neither of them spoke. The knocks came again, this time harder, sharper, filled with warning. Someone had come for the box. Someone who didn't want the truth to come out. The knocks at the cabin door echoed through the room like thunder inside a small box. Sarah felt the sound in her bones. Mark's face turned pale. Neither of them moved. For a long moment, the cabin was silent, only the wind scratching against the walls and the wooden floorboards creaking under Mark's slow breaths. Then the person outside knocked again. This time sharper. More impatient. Mark whispered, "Don't answer it." Sarah clutched the wooden box tighter. Her hands were shaking. The person outside didn't knock a 4th time. Instead, the sound of slow footsteps drifted away from the door, circling the cabin again. Mark moved quickly. He grabbed Sarah's arm and pulled her deeper into the room. "We don't know who it is," he whispered. "We don't know what they want." Sarah's voice trembled. "I know exactly what they want." Mark stared at her. "You think they're here for the box?" Sarah didn't answer. She didn't need to. Mark looked at her for a long, heavy second, then he locked the door and pulled down the curtains. But the fear inside Sarah wasn't because of the person outside. It was because of the memories the box carried. The memories she spent 5 years trying to forget. She sat on the floor holding the box close to her chest. Her heartbeat thumped against the wooden lid. Her eyes closed slowly, and the cabin around her began to blur. Her mind slipped backward. Back to the night everything changed. The flashback. The cabin looked the same that night, quiet, warm, peaceful. She had come running through the forest, out of breath, terrified. Rain was pouring hard, soaking her clothes, turning the ground into mud. The world felt dark, like someone had switched off the sky. Inside the cabin, Mark sat at the table, fixing a broken lantern. His face lit up when she arrived, but the joy in his eyes turned to worry when he saw her shaking. "Sarah?" "What happened?" he asked, standing quickly. She locked the door behind her. Her hands were frozen cold. "They're coming," she whispered. Mark frowned. "Who? What are you talking about?" Sarah opened her mouth to speak, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, she walked to the far corner, fell to her knees, and lifted the loose floorboard. Mark watched in shock. "You hid something here?" Sarah didn't answer. She pulled out the wooden box, the same one she now held in her shaking hands. Inside the box was a small silver key. Cold. Shiny. Clean. Almost innocent. But the moment Mark saw it, his face changed. Fear. Real fear. "Sarah, where did you get that?" he asked. She looked at him with wide, desperate eyes. "I found it where they told me not to look." Mark stepped back slowly, like the key was dangerous. "You shouldn't have taken it," he whispered. Sarah tried to explain. They're hiding something, Mark. Something important. Something illegal. And this key." "Stop," Mark said sharply. Don't say anything else. You don't know who you're messing with. Sarah stepped closer. You knew, didn't you? You knew all along. Mark didn't deny it. Before she could ask more, they heard a sound outside. A car engine. Doors slamming. Voices. Flashlights cutting through the darkness. Sarah panicked. They're here for the key. I can't let them take it. She closed the box and pushed it back into the floor. Her hands were shaking so badly that she almost dropped it. Mark grabbed her shoulders. Sarah, listen to me. Run. Take the back door. Go through the forest. I'll stay here and stop them. She stared at him in shock. You'll protect me? Mark nodded. I'll buy you time. Sarah believed him. She believed he would protect her. But she didn't know then he wasn't the only one trying to protect something. She ran out the back door into the cold, dark forest. Branches scratched her arms. Mud splashed her legs. Her breath came in short bursts. Behind her, she heard shouting. Police lights. Footsteps. And then. Stop. Sarah. Hands up. She froze. She turned around slowly, rain dripping from her hair into her eyes. A circle of police officers surrounded her. Guns raised. Flashlights blinding her. Sarah Briggs, you are under arrest, one officer shouted. For what? She cried. What did I do? They didn't answer. Instead, handcuffs tightened around her wrists. Her last sight before they pushed her into the police car was Mark standing near the cabin door, silent, soaked with rain, and watching her with an expression she couldn't understand. Was it guilt? Fear? Sadness? Or something else? She never got the chance to find out. The car door slammed shut. The rain washed the keyhole trails away. And the forest swallowed the sound of her screams. That was the night her life broke. That was the night she was framed. Back to the present. Sarah opened her eyes in the cabin, her breath trembling. Mark was still standing there, watching her with a strange mix of worry and something darker. He spoke first. You're remembering it, aren't you? Sarah's voice cracked. You told me you would protect me. Mark looked away. I tried. Sarah stood slowly, clutching the box. You said you didn't visit me in prison, she whispered. But someone did, someone left a message for me. A warning. A name. Mark's eyes widened. What name? Sarah swallowed hard. A single cold word left her mouth. The same name that made her hide the key. The same name she feared for 5 years. The same name that might be standing outside the cabin right now. The same name Mark never wanted to hear again. She whispered. Your brother. The room fell into a deep, cold silence after Sarah whispered the name. Your brother. Mark's expression tightened. A small twitch formed at the corner of his jaw. For a moment, he looked like someone who had been stabbed with a truth he didn't want to hear. Outside the cabin, the footsteps stopped. The world outside seemed to hold its breath. Sarah held the wooden box tighter. Her hands were cold, but her mind was burning with everything she remembered and everything she feared. Mark finally spoke, his voice lower than before. You shouldn't say his name here. Why? Sarah asked. Because he can hear us? Mark didn't answer. He walked to the window, moved the curtain only an inch, and carefully peeked outside. Dark trees. Cold wind. No figure in sight. But Mark's skin still tightened with worry. He stepped back and locked the window, like he expected someone to push through it at any moment. Sarah watched him closely. His fear wasn't fake. It wasn't soft. It was real. Deep. Old. She whispered, Mark, what does he want from me? Mark rubbed his forehead slowly. Sarah, my brother wants something from everyone. He always has. Sarah didn't blink. So he sent the police after me. Mark shook his head. I don't know exactly what he did. But I know he was here that night. I know he had the power to make things disappear, or appear. Sarah felt a chill run down her neck. So he framed me? Mark didn't respond. He didn't need to. His silence said everything. Sarah walked to the center of the cabin. The box felt heavier now, as if the truth inside it was getting stronger, ready to break out. She knelt on the floor. Mark took a step closer, his eyes locked on the box. You don't want to know what's inside, Mark said quietly. I do, Sarah said, equally quiet. Sarah. I need to know. Mark's voice sharpened. Opening that box will change things. It will pull you deeper into something you don't understand. Sarah placed the box on the ground. I'm already deep in it. I just didn't know how deep. A tiny moment passed. A moment where Sarah thought Mark might grab the box, might stop her, might run away, might even beg. But he didn't. He stood still. Hands clenched. Eyes dim with fear. Sarah slowly lifted the lid. Inside lay the silver key, glowing faintly under the cabin's weak light. Mark inhaled sharply. His voice dropped to a whisper. You should have left it in the ground. Sarah picked up the key. It was cold, colder than the cabin air. Colder than Mark's expression. What does it open? She asked. Mark didn't breathe for a second. Then he answered. A door that was never meant to be found. Sarah felt her skin crawl. What door? Mark shook his head. You don't want to know. And if my brother finds out you still have that key, he'll come. Tonight. Tomorrow. It doesn't matter. He will come. Sarah's grip tightened. Then why didn't you take it from me? Mark swallowed hard. Because I don't want to become like him. She stared at him. What do you mean? Mark hesitated, then stepped closer. So close she could see the fear swimming inside his eyes. My brother uses people, he whispered. He uses their secrets, their mistakes, their fears. That key, that little silver key holds something he wants to hide forever. Sarah shook her head slowly. I don't believe this. No one goes this far for a simple key. Mark let out a long breath. It's not the key. His voice trembled slightly. It's what the key protects. Sarah's heart thudded harder. Her fingers pressed into the key like it was the only thing holding her steady. Show me, she said. Tell me what it protects. Mark looked down. For the first time, he couldn't meet her eyes. I don't know everything, he said. But I know enough to fear it. Then tell me what you know. Mark hesitated. But Sarah's gaze didn't break. He finally exhaled and spoke again, slower this time. The key belongs to a room. A hidden room. Not in this cabin. Somewhere else. He paused. My brother used it to keep things, evidence, documents, things he shouldn't have had. Sarah's breath caught. Illegal things? Mark nodded. Very illegal. Sarah felt her chest tighten. So he locked them away, and framed me when I got close to the truth. Mark didn't deny it. His silence was louder than any answer. But before Sarah could ask more, a loud sound shattered the moment. Thud. Something hit the cabin wall. Mark jumped. Sarah's heart leaped into her throat. Thud again. Harder. Mark whispered, he found us. Sarah stared at the door, feeling her pulse slam against her ribs. Mark, she whispered, what do we do? Mark didn't take his eyes off the door. We hide, he said. But first, give me the key. Sarah pulled back instantly, shaking her head. No. Mark stepped closer. Sarah, listen to me. No, she said louder. I'm not giving this key to anyone. Mark reached for her but froze halfway. Because outside, the footsteps stopped. And then the door handle slowly, painfully, began to turn. Mark whispered, "Sarah, get behind me." But she didn't move. She clutched the key in her hand. Just as the cabin door creaked open. The cabin door opened so slowly it felt like time was stretching. Wind pushed in first, cold, sharp, carrying the smell of pine and something metallic. Sarah's fingers closed around the silver key until her knuckles turned white. Mark stood in front of her, shoulders stiff, breath held tight in his chest. The door moved wider. A shadow stepped inside. But it wasn't who Sarah expected. It wasn't Mark's brother. It was a police officer. At least, he was dressed like one. The man wore the uniform, the badge, the black boots. But something was wrong. The badge number was scratched. His face looked tired, too tired for a normal officer. And his eyes, dark, unfocused, almost hollow, made Sarah's stomach twist. Mark whispered under his breath, "This isn't good." The officer's voice was low and slow. "Mark." He said Mark's name like he had been waiting outside for hours, listening. Mark didn't move. "Why are you here?" he asked carefully. The officer stepped in fully and closed the door behind him with his foot. No emotion. No sound. His eyes slid across the room and stopped on Sarah. "You," he said. Sarah felt her heartbeat jump. "Yes?" He took one step toward her. "You ran from us." Mark stepped between them instantly, blocking her. "She ran because she's innocent," Mark said. A tiny smirk curved the officer's mouth. "Innocent people don't dig up things they shouldn't dig up." Sarah felt ice crawl down her spine. He knew about the box. "How long were you watching us?" she asked quietly. The officer tilted his head a little, as if studying her. "Long enough." Mark's jaw tightened. "You're not here to take her in for questioning." "No," the officer said. "I'm here to deliver a message." He reached slowly into his coat. Sarah thought it might be a gun. Mark thought the same, he tensed like someone preparing to jump. But the officer pulled out nothing deadly, just a small folded paper. He held it between two fingers and extended it toward Sarah. "From him." Sarah didn't take it at first. "From who?" she asked. But she already knew. The officer's eyes sharpened. "You know who." Mark stepped forward quickly. "Give it to me instead." The officer did not move his hand. "It's not for you." His voice felt colder than the cabin air. Sarah reached out, slowly, carefully, and took the note from him. Her fingers brushed his glove, it felt icy, like he'd been waiting outside in the cold for too long. She unfolded the note. The handwriting was sharp, rushed, familiar. Only 4 words sat in the middle of the page. "I want the key." Sarah's breath caught. Mark muttered a curse under his breath. "He knows." The officer took one step back, like his job was done. But then he added, "He said if you don't bring it to him, he will come here himself." Sarah shook her head. "No. I'm not giving him anything until I know the truth." The officer watched her calmly. "That's exactly what he said you'd say." Sarah's hands started to tremble. But she didn't let go of the key. Mark tried to take over. "Where is he now?" The officer's eyes slid toward the window. His voice softened, almost like a warning. "Closer than you think." A heavy silence filled the room. The wind outside howled, loud and long. The officer turned toward the door. "I delivered the message. My job is done." Mark stepped forward again. "Wait." But the officer was already pulling the door open. Before he stepped out, he looked at Sarah one more time. "You should make your decision before midnight." He didn't wait for questions. He didn't look back. He walked into the dark forest and disappeared as quickly as he had appeared. The moment the door shut, Mark exhaled shakily and locked it. "Sarah," he said, voice low, "we need to leave. Now." Sarah stared at the note still shaking in her hand. "He wants the key so badly, why? What's behind that door?" Mark ran a hand through his hair. "I told you. Something dangerous." "Dangerous how?" she asked. Mark hesitated. He struggled with his own answer. Finally, he whispered. "He kept things in that room I wasn't supposed to see. Things he trusted no one with. He used that key to hide every sin he ever committed." Sarah turned the silver key in her hand. "So this key is his protection," she said softly. "And if I keep it, he's unprotected." Mark nodded slowly. "That's why he won't stop." Sarah's voice became smaller. "What happens if he finds us tonight?" Mark really looked at her, and for the first time, she saw fear heavy in his eyes. "If he comes," Mark said quietly, "he won't come alone. And he won't leave without what he wants." Sarah felt her heartbeat thundering in her ears. She whispered, "Then we need help." Mark blinked. "From who?" Sarah closed her hand around the key, eyes sharp with fresh determination. "From the one person who knows your brother better than anyone." Mark stared at her, confused. "Who?" Sarah took a shaky breath. "Your mother." The cabin felt different after the fake officer left. Quieter, colder, like the walls themselves were listening. Sarah stood by the window, holding the silver key so tightly that the cold metal cut a small line in her palm. She didn't feel the pain. Her mind was too loud. Mark moved around the cabin, locking windows, checking corners, pulling the curtains down like he expected someone to burst in at any moment. When he finally stopped moving, he looked at her. "Sarah. Why did you say my mother?" he asked. Because Sarah remembered something. Something she tried to forget. She turned slowly toward him. "Before I was arrested," she said quietly, "your mother came to see me. She told me to leave town. She told me your brother was planning something." Mark stiffened. "That doesn't make sense. She hasn't spoken to him in years." "That's exactly why she warned me," Sarah whispered. "She was afraid of him." Mark sat down slowly, like the weight of everything had just doubled. Sarah could see the pain in his face. This wasn't only about the cabin, the key, or the threats outside. It was about family. Mark ran a hand over his eyes. "She called me once, months after you went to prison. She said he was hiding something big. Something that could destroy more lives. But she didn't explain." Sarah walked closer. "She knows what this key opens." Mark stared at her, the truth sinking into him like a stone. "Then we need to go," he said. But before they took a single step, the lights flickered. Once. Twice. Then went off completely. Darkness swallowed the cabin. Sarah froze. Mark reached for the drawer where he kept a flashlight. Then they heard it. A slow, heavy knock on the door. 3 times. Boom. 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 Sarah's breath shook in her chest. Mark silently handed her the flashlight, though their hands trembled as they touched. "Sarah," Mark whispered, "move to the back room. Quietly." But the knocking came again. This time louder. Boom. 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 Whoever was outside wasn't trying to hide anymore. Sarah stepped backward, but her foot hit the wooden chair behind her. It scraped the floor loudly. The knocking stopped. Silence spread like smoke. Then a voice, deep, cold, steady, spoke from the other side of the door. "Mark." Sarah felt her knees weaken. She knew that voice. Mark knew it too. His face turned pale. "It's him," Mark whispered. Sarah shook her head. "He came too soon. It's not midnight yet." The voice outside answered, as if reading her thoughts. I don't wait for time. Time waits for me. Sarah held the flashlight like it was a shield. Mark stepped forward, trying to stay calm. What do you want? Mark asked, though he already knew. The voice answered. You know what I want. Sarah closed her hand around the key again. The door handle moved just a little. Just enough to show he wasn't bluffing. Sarah, Mark whispered, do not give him the key. No matter what. But Sarah felt stuck. She wanted answers. She wanted the truth. She wanted to stop running. And she feared what would happen to Mark if his brother broke through that door. Her heart raced. Why does he want the key so badly? She whispered. Mark looked straight into her eyes, and she finally saw panic, real panic. Because what's behind that door, Mark whispered, can end him. Outside, footsteps circled the cabin. Slow. Patient. Predatory. He wasn't alone. More footsteps joined. Heavy boots crushing leaves. A quiet laugh that made the hairs on Sarah's arms stand up. Mark grabbed Sarah's wrist. We need to leave out the back. But when they reached the hallway, Sarah stopped. Mark, your mother's house is down the hill. Yes, he said, but it's too far. He'll catch us before we reach the road. Sarah looked at the key again. If we give it to her, she will know what to do. Mark shook his head. This isn't her fight anymore. A window shattered at the front of the cabin. Glass flew across the floor. Sarah screamed. Mark grabbed her arm and pulled her into the back room. They crouched behind the bed as footsteps entered the cabin. They could hear the intruders breathing. Mark pressed a finger to his lips, begging Sarah to stay quiet. Through the crack under the door, they saw a pair of boots. Black. Clean. Not a speck of dirt. Boots of someone who wasn't here to negotiate. Someone who came to finish a job. Sarah felt her heartbeat climbing up her throat. The boots stopped right outside the back room. A hand tried the doorknob. It turned slowly. Mark held the door from the inside, pushing it shut with all his strength. The intruder pushed harder. Sarah backed away, searching for anything, a weapon, a way out, a miracle. The old wooden walls shook. The voice came again, right outside the door. Sarah. I know you can hear me. Sarah froze. I gave you a chance, the voice continued. Bring me the key, and only one person gets hurt tonight. Mark shouted through the door, leave her alone. The man laughed, a low, cold laugh. Mark, you still don't understand. I'm not here for her. Sarah's eyes widened. Not for her? Then. The voice spoke again, slow and sharp. I'm here for you. Before Sarah could react, something slammed into the door. Hard. Splitting the wood. Mark stumbled back. The door cracked again. Sarah screamed, Mark, we have to run. But Mark didn't answer. He was staring at the breaking door. As if facing something he'd feared his whole life. Then the final blow came. The door burst open. A tall figure stepped inside, shadow covering his face, but Sarah could feel his eyes, cold, hungry, focused. He looked at Mark. Only Mark. And he smiled. Little brother, he said softly, it's time. Sarah grabbed Mark's hand and pulled him toward the back window. They jumped. They ran into the dark forest. Behind them, his voice echoed through the trees. You can run, but you won't hide for long. Sarah held the key to her chest as they disappeared into the night. The truth was coming. And the real story was only beginning.